So we talked about cash on cash. We talked about cap rates. We talked about T12s, tax records, rent rolls, triple net leases. That's another thing that comes in, right? I'm gonna be real with you. I probably did 5 commercial deals before I could understand what a triple net lease was, which I'm cool to admit that. You know what I mean? I ran through it. I tried to figure it out. But I remember my first couple commercial deals because I was like all of you. I didn't know all the terms. And I remember agents calling me like, is it a triple net? I'm like, it's netting X amount a year. What else should it net, right? There's 3 nets. Like, who wants to tell me what a triple net lease is?
That's where the tenant takes care of like pretty much all the expenses, including like repairs, taxes, and all that stuff.
Yeah, repairs, taxes, and insurance there too.
Yeah, they're essentially covering everything with the building, so you're not gonna have to deal with expenses. They're gonna cover the taxes, they're gonna cover the insurance. That's why it's a triple net. You're essentially taking all of those costs that would normally be associated with a lease, and you're taking them out. So those are easy from a number standpoint for a seller, right? Because a buyer can wrap their head around the fact that, okay, I'm really only paying for debt service, and if I pay cash for something, then that net is truly that net. So you think about like anchor stores, like you see these 7 brew coffees that are getting built everywhere right now, Rite Aids, Wawas, Sheets, things like that, right? Where they essentially develop it out and then someone buys it. Chick-fil-A, you're gonna spend your $4 million, you're gonna buy it. It's a triple net lease, no maintenance, no care, 10-year lease, you're good for 10 or 20 years. You know that it's gonna go up annually, X%, and some guy coming in with 1031 money says, I know if I put $2 million into this, I am guaranteed this much on year 1, this much on year 2, this much on year 3. So triple nets can be beneficial in that sense, but it's just knowing what it is. Because if it's on triple net, then you need to factor that out of the numbers that you're putting, whether you're helping the buyer or the seller. Right? DSCR, that's like a debt service ratio. That stuff pops up on commercials. You'll see when stuff's overpriced, a lot of times you can negotiate by essentially giving it to the bank, the lender, and saying, hey, can you tell me if you guys would lend on this? And they'll run the numbers and they'll come back and say, hey, this is at a 1 point whatever ratio, like that's too high. And so you're like, okay, well, what would you lend on at current numbers? And they'll say, we can do it at this. So that lets you essentially go back to a buyer and say, hey, we're putting in this offer, but we're putting it in here because the bank has already analyzed this deal. They're never going to loan out on what you want, and we're not going to put 50% down to try to make it work. So those ratios are going to be good to know. And then the last little bullet that I had down was 1031 exchanges, right? We talked about that a little bit, but again, keep in mind, if you're going to be working with investors, a lot of them are going to be coming to you with 1031 money. So you need to know. Now, we did another 1031 class that's recorded up on the private Facebook group for anybody that's actually in Omega at EXP with us. So if you want to know the 1031 stuff, you can go back and watch that one in our private group. But just as like a quick rundown, it's 45 days to identify. Once you close on your property, it's like 120 or 140 or whatever it is to close thereafter. They can identify up to 3 properties. They can technically do more than 3, but if you start doing more than 3, you got to close on almost all of them. It's a wild ratio. So it really only works if someone says, I'm 1031ing into 5 houses or whatever it is, where you know they're going to buy that package. If they're not going to do a package like that, it's 3 or less. They have to buy at least 1. They have to spend at least as much money as what they sold their property for. So the cash out does not matter. If they sell $1 million property and pull $500,000 cash out, they don't have to spend $500,000. They have to spend at least $1 million. That's a crucial point, because many people sell a property and they say, I'm pulling out 300 grand. I'm going to go buy a $300,000 house cash and get rid of my debt service. They cannot do that. They have to spend as much as whatever they sold. So they will likely be pulling financing again. So it's good to know that stuff on the 1031, because a lot of your buyers and sellers will either want to be selling a 1031 or they'll be buying with a 1031. Financing becomes different. You're going to need a good bank relationships. I think anybody that you can get local that does commercial stuff is great. I like Duncan Cook over at United Bank. He's just a good dude. I've been banking with him for years. I try to send everybody over to him to analyze deals. He may not be the cheapest, but he is local, so they typically have a good grasp on the market, and he's a really good guy. You want to know those people. Most commercial loans are going to be a minimum of 20 to 25% down. It's definitely not like a house where you get a minimum. How many investors come to you and they want to put 5% down on an investment property, right? It's like, doesn't work like that. And depending on the type of property, it's going to be even more than 25%. You guys know that even like duplexes, triplexes, quads, those are 25% if you could pull a loan. A lot of people don't realize that. They go want to buy a duplex, rent hack it, and then the bank tells them, oh, you need 25% down. They're like, well, dang, I thought I could just put minimum whatever down on an investment duplex or whatever it is. Keep that in mind if you're doing investments for multi, 25% down. As you get into apartment buildings and things like that, a lot of them are going to require require 25. It depends. Most commercial loans are 5 to 10 year terms, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year. You're not typically going to have a 30-year term. So you're going to be refinancing every 5 to 10 years. That's why the market is diabolically changing right this second in the commercial world, right? Because people that had loans 5 years ago at 3.5% are now having to refinance at 7.5%, and their deals don't work. So you're going to see a ton of commercial inventory coming to market over the next 12 months, probably longer, 12 to 24, and just multiply that income. We have a $19 million project in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're in it for $13.5 million right this second. We built it thinking, oh, we'll be able to refinance at a 5% rate. It's obviously not. So a 7% rate is 2 points on $13.5 million. You can type that into a mortgage calculator if you want to cry after this, right? It just changes the deal. So we're going to sell that. Like, it is what it is. We're going to have to sell it. That's the only way. So keep that in mind. If someone has a business involved, then you may want to sharpen your skills on SBA loans. That's a small business loan. That small business loan is going to let them put down less money if they're not buying the property. So you're probably not going to deal with it very often. But I say that because as a realtor, you don't want your client coming to you and saying, well, the bank told me or such and such told me that I could go buy this building at 10% down, and you're saying I need 25 or 20. The difference is that if they're buying a business and the real estate is involved, that SBA loan can be done to buy the business and the real estate, but they're going to need the bigger down payment. If they're just going to go buy the business, they can have a smaller down payment, but there's no real estate involved. I know we're hitting a lot of things here, but hopefully by the end of this, you either like, I'm going to call Jared anytime I have a commercial deal and he's going to help me, or you're going to be like, I never want to do this again. It's not to talk.
Jared,
Yeah.
so with that SBA loan, if someone does come to you with that, then they're like, hey, the bank said I could put down 10%. That's the bank saying like, hey, you can put down 10% if you were buying the business, right? So you would advise them. I was like, yeah, they're probably saying 10%, but only for the business. If you're trying to buy the real estate, and then I could be like, you can go and talk to your bank and they can confirm that. Like, let them know that you're not just planning on buying the business, but also buying the real estate, and then ask them how much you would have to put down, and it's probably going to come closer to what my number is.
Yep.
Okay.
And then keep in mind the appraisals come in. So they're going to have to evaluate that business and they're going to have to evaluate the building. So sometimes people want X amount more, like, oh, well, I got this business and it's cash flow and this. And then obviously they cook their books. So the books aren't really true, but they're like, they can make $500,000. Like, this should be a no brainer. And it's like, maybe, but they're still going to appraise this building. So if this building's only worth 1.2 and you're saying, well, it's a 40% return cash on cash, it's a no brainer. That's fine. But the bank still has to say the value is there for the loan that they're putting on that building. It's not something you're going to deal with a lot, but it's just something to think about. All right, next thing. What about marketing the property? Well, if it's small, right? Small businesses, little retail, little office buildings, duplexes, triplexes, quads, 6 units, right? They definitely move into commercial. MLS is great, right? I love to tell the story of Marcus and Millichap having like $7 million in apartment buildings that didn't sell for like 2 years. And they're all like duplexes, triplexes, quads. There was one that was like a 7 unit. I took them, I put them in Loopnet, I put them in MLS. The first week, I had 7 people inquire out of Loopnet. I had 70 people inquire out of MLS, and I sold them all within the week. Keep in mind when you're trying to pitch yourself, if someone says, well, you're selling houses, this commercial house over here, that's all they do, why would I hire you? A lot of those commercial houses don't use MLS at all because they don't fall under code of ethics because they're not realtors. So because they're not realtors, they're not in our association, which means they don't have MLS access. Not all of them. Some of them choose to, but a lot of them do not. Marcus and Millichap does not use MLS, and they're one of the bigger commercial houses for mid-grade apartment buildings in the area. So if they're not selling something, to be able to take that and value prop it, oh, we'll put it on Loopnet, we'll put it on Crexi, we're also going to get an MLS for you. That can go a long way in the right price point. So MLS is good. Keep in mind after quads, it runs commercial. And then if it's more than a 4 unit, then it's going to get listed on the commercial side of MLS, but then you also probably want to be using Crexi and Loopnet. Crexi is a game changer for you guys because it's free. They don't charge you to put listings in, and they don't put a paywall to see them either. It blows my mind how little people know about Crexi. It's Crexi.com. You can search for stuff. You can set up your own searches. You can list whatever you want for free. Loopnet, on the other hand, is a paywall. You're only going to see listings that have at least a bronze status, and they'll push those to the bottom. Silver, they push up more. Gold, they push up more. So if you want to list and be the list agent, you're going to have to spend at least, there's not much much, but I think it's about 70, 80, 90 bucks a month per listing that you want to put on there to actually have a status that gets seen. And then if you want actual data, Loopnet's the most expensive. Crexi, you can pay for Crexi Pro. It's about 260 bucks a month. I pay for it. And then that lets you go in and pull any records that you want. So if you want to go find who owns a property, you can pull up that address. You can find the LLC. It's going to give you the owner name. It's going to give you their phone number. You're going to be able to reach out and contact them. It works for that. You can also use it for running comps. If you've got rental comps you're looking for, sales comps, you're not going to find that data in MLS because most of the commercial houses aren't using MLS. So if you look on Crexi, you can find typically reliable records of sales if you're trying to run comparables. But keep in mind, Crexi Pro or Loopnet or Reology, those are three. That's going to be your bread and butter for circle prospecting to build a commercial business. Because again, if people aren't just banging your door down to sell, you're not doing an open house, you're not buying Zillow leads. All of your listing leads, right, are only going to go to the list agents in the commercial world. So if you don't have any listings, you're not going to get any inquiries. So if you're going to beat the streets, Crexi is a really good way to do it. How many of you use Vulcan 7 to circle prospect like expireds, FSBOs, just as realtors? Man, just us? Dang, man, we'd crush like 1,000+ calls a month out of Vulcan. So we use that for the residential side. But on the commercial side, right, you may say, hey, I want any building that has a mortgage that's coming due in the next 6 to 12 months with an interest rate under 4%. And you could formula in Richmond, that's a multifamily. And then Crexi will give all of that to you. It'll say, here's every building that's got a 4% or less rate that they're going to have to refinance in the next 12 months. And then you can turn that into your circle prospect list and say, hey, I see you've got an apartment over at 123 Gray Street. See you've owned the thing for 20 years. I see it's coming up for refinance. I just wanted to reach out to see in the state of the market right now with rates, would you be interested in selling that property on market or off market, or were you planning on keeping it? You could run another search for buildings that have been paid off. Your cash buyers. I want a building that's been owned for at least 20 to 30 years, and I want it to be paid off. Because then what are you going to get? You're going to get really old people that are aging out, possibly. You can look up buildings that are paid off that have been transferred without a sale, like a gift deed. What does that tell you? I'm not going to answer that one for you. Someone's got to tell me they're paying attention. What does it show you if you go and find a property that was owned for 20, 30, 40 years, paid off, and now it just transfers over without a sales price, just a gift deed?
That leads me to believe that somebody left it to their kids.
Bingo. How often do the kids want to deal with it? Parents come along, here's legacy wealth kids. The kids are like, that sounds complicated. Or they don't live in the area, or they don't want to mess with it. Or they think to themselves, ooh, all of that inheritance stuff just reset. I could just go sell all these buildings for $15 million and drop $15 million in the bank. It sounds pretty cool to me to go buy a Bugatti and a mansion and be left with $10 million instead of just living on residual income because I'm not smart like my dad was that bought all these buildings. Or, oh yeah, there's 5 of us and 3 of us want to keep the building, but 2 of our brothers and sisters are douchebags, right? And they want their money and they want it right now. And we don't have the experience. They won't refinance it to us. We don't have any of the knowledge. We don't have the experience. We don't have the finances. So there's a million things. So I'm just throwing out a couple different options on like, hey, this is what these guys are doing. If you want to sell commercial real estate at a high level, they're just burning phones. They're just calling every multifamily owner if that's what they're going for, every commercial, whatever category they want to sell and whatever price point, that's what they're doing until someone says, okay, yes, I'm interested. Either off market on. Then if it's off market, they're pumping it out to everybody they can. If it's on market, they're getting it on Crexi Loopnet. Now when it's on Crexi and Loopnet, now all the inquiries are going to come to me because it's not like Zillow. They can't sell it to some other agent that's bidding higher. If I put it on Crexi, I'm going to see every single person that looks at it or downloads anything or requests info. So if you even look at my stuff in Crexi and you're logged in, I see it and I can call you. So keep that in mind. So the way to build a commercial business is to go out and hunt for those listings, and then that promotes to get you clients down the road. But if you're like one of those people that's like, I don't even circle prospect or make calls as a real estate agent right now, that's fine, right? But if that's not your business, you're probably not going to like it on the commercial side either, because it is a longer burn. They are going to sit on market much longer. It's just a lot more going into it. But when you're ready to start, one thing to keep in mind is just paperwork starts changing now too, right? You're going to be doing LOIs. That's a letter of intent. It's essentially a letter that says you want to buy the property, but typically that lets you get all the legal mumbo jumbo and the terms out the way versus going back and forth and redlining contracts. It's like, here's our letter, change it, do whatever. They're non-legally binding almost always. And the bigger the building, typically once you sign that LOI, a lot of times a lawyer will actually write the contracts thereafter. So sometimes you're not even contract writing. If it's a smaller building in the city, you're probably using a standard commercial agreement, which is in MLS. They are very simple. They are very basic. And then the last bit is if you're on the buy sides, there are no commission rules in commercial. So all that crap you've been dealing with residential real estate and commissions over the last year since August, that's been commercial forever. They're not realtors. They do not care about you. They do not want you involved. They will go so far as to try to get your clients to come look at the property without you and say that it's not available for you. They are a bunch of raging criminals for the most part that don't answer their phone, don't call anybody back, and they're just awful to deal with. Let alone you get a lease agent, because if it's a lease agent, man, you might as well just kiss it goodbye. Put the lease on the door and tape it there, because they're never going to call you back. So once you realize that $10 million property is likely not a 3% commission. It's likely that maybe that list agent has taken 4 to 5 to 6% for themselves, offered you nothing. The seller knows they're still paying the 6% because that's their fee. Hey, we got a team of 4 that are helping you sell this thing, and we're doing all the showings and yada, yada, yada. And then as the agent, I'm reaching out saying, hey, is there broker co-op? And a lot of agents are going to tell me, no, you bring the buyer, then they bring your commission as well. So as much as you think, oh man, I'm going to just rake it in on these bigger deals, it could be you fighting for 1 to 2% to try to make it work. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you so much for tuning in to one of our weekly training calls. Obviously, you caught the recorded session, but if you're interested in catching any of our live sessions that we do them typically on Mondays. I'm going to put the link below. So if you want to join any of our trainings live so you can participate, so you can comment, ask questions, feel free to come. This is for our EXP group that we have here, our Omega group of agents, but it's open to anybody that wants to join, really. So if you're looking for coaching, if you're looking for training, feel free to hit that link below, and we'll see you on one of our live calls.